Greetings to each and every one of you, wherever you are in this beautiful world. And as we've been saying it each time, although life is beautiful, but at times it could be difficult and challenging. So the purpose of our program is to discuss the challenging parts and learn something from them to make life easier and more beautiful. I'm Dr. Daniel Sadiq, glad to be here with you another time and go through some of these subjects that entertain our minds. Today's subject is continuation of what we discussed in the last program, which was transparency. As we discussed transparency, we hopefully understood that it's a requirement to be more clear, to be more transparent and allow other people to see, understand what's happening to us. And today's subject, as I said in the continuation of the same subject, is vulnerability, which is a little bit more complicated because it has both negative and positive attributes. Personally, I was confused with this word for a long time myself, and that's why I feel it's very important that we can be discussing it in a more profound way to figure out what it really takes us to be more vulnerable and open, and what if that negative part of it, which is being afraid of being seen, being criticized, being misunderstood, is going to be affecting us. So let's start with the translation of the word, the meaning. It's being exposed when we suppose that harm is around us. So you can see that just by this definition, if we are thinking that we are in a harmful environment, it's really difficult to be open. It's really difficult to just allow ourselves to be exposed. After all, our midbrain, our limbic system requires us to be more defensive, requires us to be more vigilant about our environment and what's happening in it and how we can protect ourselves. So then vulnerability becomes some sort of a opposite feeling towards security, because I need to feel so secure that even if I'm exposed, I can understand that other people or other elements or the environment is not going to be dangerously affecting me. So you can see that by this kind of understanding, there must be a sort of self-confidence underneath this vulnerability, because if we're not feeling confident that if we're exposed, we're not going to be haunted, we're not going to be defeated, we're not going to be in the harm's way, then we can be more vulnerable, and that shows a strength. So in that position of strength, one who is allowing him or herself to be more vulnerable allows him or herself to be seen in the context that they exist. They're not putting any covers in front of themselves, and they're not hiding, they're not going behind other issues not to be understood or seen. So then vulnerability requires a certain self-trust, self-worth, which is going to be shown to other people by being able to be transparent and be able to just say what it is that's happening, how we are. Imagine I'm sitting right now in front of a camera connecting with you. So if I'm not vulnerable to my making mistakes or sounding bad or whatever, that as a viewer you're seeing me, then it's going to be provoking me with anxiety and certain stress. So stress and anxiety could be direct results of us not feeling safe and just putting ourselves out there and just kind of naked, because when we're coming out in this way that I'm open, that you can judge me in any way you want, you can see me in any way that you want, you can understand me in any way that you want, that makes it a lot easier for me to sit here and talk to you, versus if I'm very much concerned and self-observing about every move that I make and how I'm doing it, it's going to be rather difficult, and the connection is not going to be as fluid or as sincere or as authentic as it should be. So I think this is getting a lot more clear if you can see that you are in the same way showing up in life in many different ways, in many different contexts, and a lot of times maybe you are not very much vulnerable to being yourself, being who you are. And as you know, we often wear different masks, so if I'm working with my patients, maybe I have a little bit of a more covered face. Maybe I don't expose everything about my personal life, because in that context of working with a client, the issue is not about me, it's about their vulnerability. It's about how they can show themselves and how they can be clear about their feelings, their ways of being, the ways that they see themselves. And then in some other cases, when, for example, as I'm sitting here or I'm with my family members, then it's my responsibility to even be more vulnerable as I'm in a session, and I can be allowing more of myself to be seen in different formats. So we have these filters that we can use, these filters to be seen by others, and then the less these filters are and the closer they are to who we really are, the more valuable they are. And as I said, sometimes we need to wear these lenses or these filters, and then we can just be kind of more directly involved with the other person, because it's not about us, it's not about our vulnerability, it's about the other person feeling comfortable and relaxed enough to be open and exposed. So being exposed is one of the key words in this concept, because being exposed could be just translated as being seen, as being under the microscope. And then if you feel that you're under a microscope, or you're being kind of judged in a certain way, definitely you will feel more anxious, more fearful, or more uncomfortable about the prospects of how you are being evaluated, how you're being utilized. So you may wear those masks and protect yourself, and then now when you're wearing those masks and you're not showing more of yourself, imagine if these masks are really too strong and they're not truthfully showing you as who you are. That's where people can understand you as deceptive, as somebody who's not authentic, as somebody who's not reliable, somebody that's not trustworthy. So you see, there is a fine line in this situation, and that's why vulnerability becomes a little bit complicated, and it's a personal observation of ourselves in different situations, and how we can process our presence, our being in the moment, by feeling comfortable and understanding, having the knowledge of where I am, what's the situation, how I'm connecting with others, and all of the good stuff that we're always talking about. Now, in the context of what we're discussing on the balancing position and how we can be balanced, so let's use vulnerability in a balanced way. How would it be if we would like to balance ourselves in a way that is not just positive all the time, which is relatively good, or how we can avoid to go to the negative parts of it and have this understanding that where this fine line is. So if we want to discuss this in the details, we should go back to the 8 spokes of the wheel, or the 8 concepts that we're continuously discussing in our conversations about balance. Because just to remind you, balance is a position that we have in the middle of dealing with 8 different issues, which are our physical, mental, emotional, relational, recreational, environmental, spiritual, and financial. So now, if we would like to discuss vulnerability in those contexts, as how each one of these 8 spokes are involved, how each one of these concepts or areas of our presence in life are being affected, let's start with physical. Okay. Physical vulnerability means that, I'm personally, with my body and the way that I am, I'm feeling safe in a situation, and I can be exposed, and I can be in a way just being seen and confident that there is nothing bothering me. So physical vulnerability means that if if my body is touched by someone, I'm not reacting to it. And if I'm reacting, then why am I reacting? So that vulnerability in that physical sense is how I contact my physical presence with someone else, and then how I can see myself in this context as far as relation with my sleep patterns, relationship with my sexuality, which is really important in this concept of vulnerability, and other behaviors as a human being that I have. So in the physical is really being concerned about my position of this vehicle in the arena of my environment, how physically I'm open or not to receive or give and show myself in a way. Let's say if I haven't worked out, then I've been eating in the last few months because of being stuck in the home. So I have certain vulnerability towards people judging me about my weight or the size of my stomach. So that that concern or conscious way of being about myself affects my vulnerability in a physical way, and I'm not going to be exposing myself. So I may be covering my belly, I may be wearing a loose shirt, and so I don't want to be seen in this way. I hope that's clear enough. And when we go to the second part of this conversation, the vulnerability of our mental health is really important. So our mind is a vehicle, our mind is a vehicle's function of the engine of the computer system that is running it. So if our mind is not vulnerable, means that we are consistently looking into the reasons why this is happening, why this is not happening. The judgments are affecting us a lot. So our mind is monitoring constantly the situation. And if I'm not vulnerable enough, so this self-judgment is continuously affecting my physical vulnerability also, and my emotional vulnerability. The mental part is a conduit between our physical and emotional, right? And then emotionally, how I'm going to be vulnerable is how I'm reactive, how stress is affecting me, how fearful I am of being naked and exposed emotionally, that other people understand how I feel. This is a challenging one. We haven't learned to expose our feelings. Nonetheless, we don't even have a lot of words or definitions for our own feelings because we haven't learned those. In my biggest challenge in my sessions and my work with my clients is that they really do not have a good concept of what the feelings are. So when I ask what you feel, they have a very hard time explaining their feelings. Imagine how difficult it would be in our vulnerability if we are emotionally not able to understand our feelings and how we can be communicating these feelings with someone else. So if I'm putting too many filters and I'm not showing my feelings, I may seem really distant, I may seem disconnected with other people, which takes us to the next level of this conversation, which is vulnerability in our relationships. So which is really important again, as friends, as couples, as colleagues at work, there is a certain vulnerability that we need to have, and then probably certain protectiveness that we would like to have, which we have called them as boundaries. So how these boundaries are created and how the boundaries are relating with vulnerability, it's becoming a question. Because if now I am setting loose boundaries and I'm exposing myself, or I'm allowing other people to step in my territory, eventually I may feel uncomfortable. So the appropriate boundaries are required before my sense of vulnerability can be intrigued and can be stated in any possible way. So in relationships, we would like to negotiate our position, and if somebody feels close enough, if we are trusting enough of this relationship, we can allow our vulnerability to be more visible, more shown, and more connection can be made. However, if this relationship feels uncomfortable, if trust is not there, if we haven't built a foundation for togetherness, then guess what happens? Then vulnerability is not going to have any space, and we're going to be blocking each other from more closeness and more understanding of each other. So you see the emotional and relational parts of vulnerability are really important, because emotionally we are letting go of fears, we're letting go of embarrassments, we're letting go of anger, we're letting go of our depressed feelings when we are vulnerable. So we're almost numb to all of these feelings, and we're open to just discuss them. Okay, and then on a positive way, we can just be more trustworthy, we can feel more stronger, we can feel more adequate, we can feel more in touch with other people when this vulnerability is presented in a relationship, and more trust can be built. Well, from here we can go to our recreational part, which is becoming a little bit of a different subject in vulnerability, which is kind of being vulnerable to the pleasure seeking, or how much of pleasure is allowed in this system. You know, if I'm vulnerable towards pleasure seeking, that means that if I indulge myself, that is going to affect me, which is going to be harmful. And then in this case, I need to understand that how my exposure to certain triggers or certain joy-seeking matters is going to affect my life in a negative way, which in a positive way, if we are vulnerable in a positive way in our recreational activity, it's kind of closer to bravery, that I allow myself to experience something that I haven't experienced before. I'm open to certain concepts of having fun and being fulfilled that I haven't done and I'm not closed off to. So you see, again, there is a fine line there. The balance is really important in this concept also, because how much of vulnerability or allowing exposure to certain subjects is going to be acceptable, allowed. Imagine a lot of kids, unfortunately, we see that smoke weed and use other ways of getting high. So you know, when this exposure is coming from a place that our children, our youngsters are just utilizing this kind of a numbing system not to be vulnerable. Actually, they're defending themselves, so this use is going to be a very negative pleasure-seeking attitude which numbs the system and is not necessarily making them more vulnerable. However, for some people, they're self-medicating because otherwise they'll be under a lot of stress, and then because they're using this, tool, the weed or something similar, they are allowing themselves to be more vulnerable because otherwise they're not feeling their feelings. You see how touchy this subject can become? In an adult mind, it's a little bit different. When we're talking about a man under age of 24 or a woman under age of 21, we're definitely concerned with the use of any of these pleasure-seeking ways, because the vulnerability is still not in a stage that the mindfulness part of this person is online to be able to make the best decisions of how much of this vulnerability is appropriate for this moment. So the highest recommendation is that we do not allow our kids to be exposed and then examine their vulnerability through these mediums, but unfortunately it happens. The next part of this conversation goes towards our vulnerability in our environment. how we are exposed to nature, how vulnerable we are to cold and hot, to snow or rain, or pollution, or global warming, or anything else that's affecting us in a macro environmental context, and also our environment in a micro environment, which is our home, our office, our spaces that we're taking, and how vulnerable we are to noises, we are to different ways that we can feel uncomfortable, and that creates some concern also, because some people are more sensitive towards certain environments, and then their vulnerability may really become a negative issue and they'll be suffering more. So the question you may ask is how somebody like this who's more sensitive can reduce their vulnerability and to kind of become more adaptive to the circumstances. My recommendation is exposure, gradual exposure, allowing ourselves to be in those environments, understanding that yes, this may be difficult, but then again, I would allow my vulnerability to become more of a confident way, that I'm not going to be reactive to the situation and create some sort of a discomfort in this situation. So, and the last, the one before last part, we move into spirituality and how, in a spiritual sense, this vulnerability is there, which is kind of, let's say very directly, fear of God, So how vulnerable we are to a power above us, and how we feel that this judgment is going to affect us in a way that we go to hell, or we go, we're punished, or the opposite, how we are vulnerable to be under the impression of this uniting factor in the universe, which is the energy system, that I'm allowing this to take part of me and be inside of me, and how I can just see myself as one with everyone else. And this subject of vulnerability in that spiritual way, it's something that we have been experiencing in the last couple of weeks with all of these riots and the situations, because on a spiritual level, we all one. There is no particular race that is better than the other, religion that's better than the other, philosophy of mind that's better necessarily than somebody else's. So in that united way, in that together way, this spirituality allows us for the most amount of vulnerability, that we can understand that we are acceptant of each other, that we are not separate from each other, that our hearts are palpitating together in one direction. We all have same pulsation of our hearts, and then imagine if these hearts are all pounding together in one direction without any noise, without any voice, without really saying something, how we can just be one with each other. And this vulnerability becomes really the most powerful, because we feel powerful, that as part of this godly sensation inside of us, there is nothing really that can stop us or scare us or put us in the harm's way. Well, it's a tough subject, again, and not necessarily everybody believes. So, I would like to end this conversation with the last part of our 8 spokes, which is our financial vulnerability, which is about our values. How these values are affecting us, how these values are being seen by ourselves and others in an appropriate way. So my vulnerability will be aligned with my values. If I'm okay with the values that I have, and I'm proud of them, and I'm honored by them, then I wouldn't be afraid of being more vulnerable to create more values for myself and my community, and we can together again make something more powerful and meaningful out of what we have now. And the opposite side, if I'm bankrupt emotionally, physically, mentally, or any other parts of what we discussed, then imagine what happens to my financial vulnerability. I'll be scared of any investment. I'll be scared of any putting my foot forward and creating a different situation that could be more productive. I'll be hesitant. I'll be kind of against any kind of movement. and I'm not going to be creating more values. Well, I think this sums up all of the 8, and I know that some of you have been trying to ask some questions. Your chats on our website are possible. If you have any questions, you can always send it to Togetherness Media, or you can go to my website, drsadiq.com. We're able to answer the questions. So you can definitely bring up any questions to me, and I'll be more than glad to respond. In regards with our balancing the wheel, I need to tell you that this balance is really important, and how we see ourselves in this balanced position is very important. Wheel of well-being is a vehicle, is a tool to be utilized in bringing more balance to our lives, and each one of us has certain strengths and certain weaknesses. In some places we're more capable, some places less, and we would like to realize that, and we would like to bring it into one way that we can be more cognizant of our situations and utilizing ourselves in the most productive way, as we just discussed. If you would like to see how balanced you are, you can always go to our website, wheelofwellbeing.com, and take the wheel test or the quiz, and then through that, you'll be more connected with us and the concepts that we follow, and we'll be proud to represent you with the Wheel Select, which is a community, and we have so many lessons, understandings, concepts for you that we're more than glad to share with you. Me and my wife, Coach Bonnie, are consistently feeling honored to bring more subjects of importance to you, and then your questions are very important. One question that I got is, this person says, I feel scary when I want to be vulnerable. What should I do? Well, I think we just covered that, but I'm going to cover it one more time. If you understand in what area you're scared, is it physical, mental, emotional, relational, you need to dissect it a little bit more deeper to figure out in what area you're afraid of this vulnerability. And then when you figure that out, then obviously you're going to be making yourself stronger in that area. Okay? Or if you're reactive in that area and it's too much of the concept that is sitting on your shoulder, then maybe you can let go of something. That's why your personal involvement in understanding your feelings and where you are in life is the number one key for getting to your vulnerability in a more effective way. Yes, sometimes it's scary to be vulnerable because we are afraid our security is endangered. The common word in all of these 8 areas that is endangered or feels endangered or needs more trust in it is security. If we're feeling insecure in any of those areas, obviously our vulnerability is going to be affected by that insecurity. So we need to realize what insecurity is there. I hope this information is useful to you, and I'm looking forward to be spending more time with you in near future, and looking forward to other times that we can take different subjects. Please send in your subjects that you like to be discussed, and I'm honored to just give you that information and share them with you. Have a blessed day, and thank you for attending. Thank you for visiting this site and understanding these concepts in a personal way that they can make your life better. Thank you.